It's interesting, starting a people business, I think, or starting any business, I think that just making sure you know your vision. What do I want this thing to become? And then how do I work it backward? I think is so critical. The other thing I would say is, I think for so many people, just document everything. Document everything that you do, and iterate and look for similarities. Because scaling a people business is much different than scaling a tech company.
Yep.
We have, I don't get the same leverage of like, I add a new client, my fixed costs stay the same or relative. Instead, I add a new client, my fixed costs go up, as a stair step. That's why venture capital and others hate businesses like ours. Trust me, there's definitely days where I look at payroll and I'm like, man, if I was just a single shop, but that's just not fulfilling. I'm not gonna be able to impact as many people that way.
Welcome to another episode of the B2B Startup Sales Podcast. Today with Jake Dunlap, CEO of Creating the Future of Sales with Skaled Consulting. And also I've been discussing before, actually jumping on the show here, doing a thing that marketing has been doing for a long time, that you don't need to hire everybody, but that you also enable with customers to have more of a buyer journey than a sales process. So Jake, over to you after being VP Sales at Glassdoor, at Novate, at other companies, and now helping other sales leaders do the same that you did in your past.
Well, that's pretty good, man. I think you've got most of it nailed there. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. We have about 40 plus people globally. And really, for me, I think sales is getting ready to go through a big, kind of transformation over the next 5-10 years, where customers are getting access to more and more information and, really looking for a different experience. And so a lot of the work that we're doing is helping organizations kind of catch up and make sure that they're providing a process that meets, the modern customer where they want to be met versus, your standard methodology that might be a little bit more what we want to do, or even how they're using sales technology, which we do a lot of sales technology deployment work,
Right.
and ways that can enable their sales organizations to be 10, 20, 30% more effective. So there's just a lot of really exciting things going on in sales, both on the process and the tech side, that I'm really excited about. So
Yeah, likewise. And I think if I'm VP Sales or Chief Revenue Officer at a growth stage company, like 5 to 25 million annual revenue, what's one thing I can do in my sales tech or using technology better that I can do right now, like early October, that's going to help me at least get 1% better for me and my team?
Well, if I was a frontline rep or a leader, really, I would really take a look. If you said, Jake, what's something that you could do relatively quickly? I think there's probably 2 or 3 pieces of advice that I could give. The first would be, I would look at your tech stack, and I really feel like reps in certain tech, they need to get certified. Like, that, and that might seem crazy. You're like, wait, why would a salesperson? Isn't that my sales ops team department? And the answer is no. You as a seller or as a leader, like, this is your future. If you don't know what these tools can do and you don't know how to leverage them to their full capability, and instead you're relying on someone else to tell you, wow, you're probably missing out on 80% of what you could be doing. So I would really heavily advise anyone to get well versed. I've said this post before too. It got some heat. It was a while ago. I said, if I was a rep today, I would easily be investing $300 to $400 a month in sales tech. I don't need my company to pay for it. Why? Because it's going to make me a shit ton of commission. And I think right now there's a little bit of, around tech in particular, there's a little bit of a mindset of like, I'm just sitting here with my hand out waiting. I'm like, I'll just go buy a license myself. If I think this stuff's going to eliminate the mundane stuff and, make my life, easier, invest in yourself, my friends. So, for a lot of folks, tech is one. And then the other is customer journey. If you're a sales leader listening to this, or a sales rep, my best advice is, when's the last time you really mapped your customer journey from very first interaction through they become a customer? What are the steps that go into it? How did they actually buy? Who are the people that needed to be involved? And really thought about that. I couldn't believe it. I did a session for a team of 50 last week. How many of you are recording your calls or Zooms? 4 hands went up.
How many did you ask? How many of them actually build mutual action plans where they involve the buyer in the journey as well?
Oh, 10%, maybe less, maybe, yeah. But again, it's a little bit more at the enterprise might be 15, 20, and it's, non-exist, rightfully so. Like there's a stage where it doesn't make as much sense, even though you can talk them through the mutual action plan, right? Next steps is we'll do this, then typically we'll do this. That's kind of how I learned it to start. So I'm just kind of trying to think out loud here, but those are the two big ones for me: taking a look at your process and always iterating, taking a look at the tech stack. And again, I think if you're a seller or even a sales leader, especially because this is, B2B startup sales or SaaS, it's, you got to invest in yourself right now. I don't think there's been a more critical time in sales where this is going to be required. Or in 5 years, from now, you're going to go, but my company never taught me that. Or, I didn't, my boss never coached me. Your boss never coached you. You have the tools to listen to your own calls, get over your own ego and listen to your own calls.
Chorus, get unique now.
Oh my God, there's some really cheap Zoom. Just even if you're on Zoom, record your Zoom. Like you don't need the conversational intelligence, and run that game film. So
yeah.
Anyway, I digress a little bit, but that's it to me. It's all about process and tech in 2021, 2022.
I think that's an interesting wording you use there, like run the game film, right? And in sports, in elite sports, that's happening all along. Like people film football, basketball in Switzerland, soccer, boxing, whatever, and they watch the tape all over again. I watched my box sparring session 5 times every round at least, and zoom in and was like, oh, that got punched in the face. Why? Okay, didn't have my
exactly
dove to the left, didn't properly uppercut, and I learned. Why do you think do so few salespeople apply that same elite athlete attitude, even if there's a pretty clear transformation to making more money, being less frustrated, having more confidence?
Well, I think a lot of it starts with leadership, meaning I don't know if we are teaching reps, to be open and to be, again, not that they all need to be, that we don't need to be taught, but I do feel like sales leadership is starting to become more and more and more tactical and not really that helpful. The pipeline meeting, where's your activity at? The role of sales leader is professional development. And I think in professional development isn't giving people advice 24/7. It's understanding that individual, where do they want to grow, and then enabling them to grow. Because if you take care of the person, they'll take care of the number. And so some of this starts with leadership. A lot of it that we're really focused right now on things like qualification criteria, and not enough on how to run a proper discovery process, for example, how to actually understand and gather the key business insights versus how to gather medic or BANT.
Scotsman,
and I think
whatever.
that's it. And so I think those are the big, issues that I see.
Yeah, right. So from what I understand, you mainly work with North American tech companies, right?
Oh no, we've got companies all over. Yeah, we've got full-time people. Yeah, we've got full-time in Europe. We've got clients in India. We've got clients in Australia, New Zealand. No, we've got clients all over the globe. So we get a chance to see all the different flavors.
So that's really interesting to pick your brain on that then, because the B2B SaaS really is pushing that SDR, BDR, AE, onboarding manager, customer success manager. So as a buyer, I talk to 5 different individuals to invest 20K nowadays, versus some old school, but also some new school sales leaders believing more of a full stack sales rep that is helping the buyer go through the whole buyer journey and be there. I have a mobile phone number. What difference do you see culturally, North America versus Europe especially, and also what's your personal take on these? And when does it make sense to split, and when does it make sense to full stack?
Here's the thing about splitting. The reason it's a pain in the ass is that it's the handoffs between the internal teams suck, right? It's that it's not that to talk to those individual people. Again, at the step one, you don't care. You're not trying to make another friend as a buyer, right? You're not I really want to keep talking to Peter. Nobody's thinking that, right?
Right.
So it's more about what stinks is that person has a conversation with you and it feels like literally you just keep repeating yourself. And so I feel like, look, if you're going to have a specialized sales organization, you really have to make sure that you have very strong handoff processes between each group, not just putting out a data field in Salesforce, but use Vidyard to record a video for 5 minutes talking through it that the sales reps reviews ahead of time and takes notes on, right? Like, so I think that if you do have a team that's split, it's not that it has to be bad and that the split is what's bad. It's the handoff of information. Now, the area I will say it's the worst is like an inbound sales development rep where someone comes to you and saying, I want a demo. I want to learn more. I visited 3 pages on your website, and still, then you make me talk to someone who doesn't even know how to demo the product. And you're like,
because that person is just going to ask you, how many seats do you want? Can you answer me the city you live in? Like, okay.
Oh, you're qualified now. Or how many? Great. What's your title? Okay. Let me do what's medic again. It's like, so it's like budget, authority, need, time. If you're a BANT person, it's like, okay, great. Do you have budget for this? Like, they're asking that out of the gate. And it's like, I used to learn how to create the need, which is to say, like, look, it sounds like this, and this is happening. How have you thought about putting resources against that? Oh my gosh, Jake, I didn't even realize it was this bad. Like, I know it's terrible. Like that we're just missing that. The discovery used to be kind of a self-discovery for people to kind of flesh out those qualification criteria themselves. And it's become a very rudimentary, basic, non-value add for both sides.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And like in B2B tech sales, like the really fast scaling sales engagement platforms, CRMs, like Avant, sales intelligence tools out there, not mentioning any names. I've been on a few of these discovery calls, and I was like, man, this is bad. And that person is probably earning $100,000 to $250,000 a year because demand is so much, there's so much talent is so much sought after. What's your take on the talent shortage in B2B tech sales? I mean, on great talent shortage that can actually do the job of getting somebody and guiding people through this buyer journey successfully. And what are initiatives you see that need to happen to fix it?
Yeah, it's a really good call out. And I don't know. It's interesting to think about the shortage, right? We used to get people and train them, right? And I feel like what we have right now, just in sales, and well, it's probably other disciplines too, but we've got a bit of a chicken and egg problem. What I mean by that is people are leaving. If we feel like, well, these people are going to leave in a year and a half, so why should we train them? And then they're leaving because we're not training them. And so I really feel it's the company's job to stop the cycle. And that, again, when I come into especially early stage companies, and this is for all my CEOs out there, sales leaders, and the analogy I always give, I say, okay, so what platform, like what code base is your code written on? Okay, C++ or Ruby on Rails, whatever it is, right? Okay, great. So would you ever just hire a developer and say, oh wait, you've written in Ruby before? Oh yeah, here you go. Okay, well just go code some stuff. But in sales, but that's what we do in sales. We're like, oh, just go. Yeah, it's like, just imagine a developer. You're saying, hey, go just stand over the shoulder and listen and just watch how Jake writes code, and then just do some of that stuff. Can you imagine what a Frankenstein and how horrible your product would turn out? Well, right. That's how we typically train and onboard at early stage startups, right? Typical training and onboarding is a terrible playbook that's not really documented. Almost no onboarding process, or if they do have an onboarding process, it's almost exclusively like shadowing, which, by the way, most people don't learn through osmosis. They learn through like seeing and doing, combined. And so I think a lot of this is investment in the people. That the reason we're not seeing as much results is we're putting people out there faster because we always feel like we're behind on our number. We're not investing in them after we put them through the onboarding. We're not creating onboarding plans, and it doesn't have to be too crazy. That really help to set people up, for success. But it's a combination of those things that we treat sales like this thing of like, well, if you've done sales before, then you should be able to do sales here. But just unfortunately, it's just not how it works.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. And I think that especially because we don't have so many like A+ players that are already A+ players in sales, because B2B tech sales is growing quite quickly, we need to train people. And I think like the sales enablement is so important, right? I mean, that's also for me, like the motivation behind it, why I found a sales playbook. And I guess for you, like the same with Scaled. You basically mentioned also services, like you do part-time VP of sales, you do sales operation, you do sales enablement. You even do like the hiring part. How do you map this out to a client? Like, and how do you differentiate like the done for you? Like, give me your boat, I'll get fish, versus like I'll teach you how to fish and help you become self-sufficient. And I think like a bonus question on that is also like, what impact does it have like with both models on your customer lifetime?
Well, are you talking about like the segmentation between positions or just the like roles themselves?
In terms of like, I guess you will get some VP sales or some chief revenue officers who come to you and say like, my VP sales quit. Can you please do the job? I was like,
Yeah,
yeah, 2 days a week. It costs you like, I don't know,
that's right.
2-3K a day, whatever you charge. And then also say like, do you want to run that for a year, or do you say like, we run that until we find somebody else who can do the job? And then
Depends.
like, yeah.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on growth trajectory. If you've got 5 or 10 people, like, you don't need a CRO, just FYI, until you've got like 25 or 30 salespeople. What are they gonna like? How much strategy can they do at 5 people? Like, there's 5 people. Like, how much even at 10 people, it's like, company. Well, we need to hire a VP of sales, and it's like, no, you need a sales manager. You need someone who's can like get in the trenches, make it happen, etc.
Who's still like selling, right? Who still like can be the top performer if that person desires, but can show other people how to go from B
They built it
to
out.
A.
They've done it enough. Exactly. They've got a repeatable process. So you're not having to say, I'm not saying don't look for that, but if someone's been removed for 10 years, I'm just telling you right now, they're all going to say, no, I really like to roll up my sleeves and I like to, and then the reality is they like to sit behind spreadsheets.
Yep.
And maybe hop on a call every once in a while.
We are seeing that way too many times, like startups hiring Mr. Dashboard or Mrs. Dashboard, and then firing Mrs. Dashboard again, or Mr. Dashboard as well, because it doesn't work. So maybe like walk me through a bit from a customer journey perspective. I'm now chief revenue officer of a growth stage company. I have 20 sales reps. My VP sales maybe quit. I think they do not do bad. Like some of them close 500K up to $1 million a year, but also some people close maybe 200-300K a year. So I think overall I could increase it by 15%, but I don't have the capacity. I jump on a call with, I don't think always Jake Dunlap in every imaginable case. You have a human schedule. What happens next? Like how much do I typically invest? What's a useful timeline for me to collaborate with Scale?
Yeah, usually companies are investing. They start at like 5 to 10K a month, and then we've got projects that are, 6+ figures. So, for us, well, no, or like all in, we've got companies that are spending 30 or 40K a month, probably, to companies that are spending, 5 to 10K. And then some of those companies we've been working with for like 2+ years. So I think for us, it's, are you ready to start to, not to be, make a pun, but to scale, right? Like if you're kind of happy with the way things are and things are moving forward, like great, like we're not a good fit. But if you're an early stage company and you need someone to kind of sit in the seat or be an advisor, great. And then, then maybe, our person's in the seat for, 2 or 3 days a week. And then that's when it can be more like 20, 30K. But, we try to make it fairly equivalent to what you would be to hire a full-time. And even though it feels like it, on paper, it's less hours, our people, you don't pay for vacations or sick days or,
exactly,
bank holidays or any of that. So, you're getting the juice of close to a full-time person many of the time. So, it really depends on the client. We try to make sure that each client, we've kind of put together the right plan for them, but that's a good range.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I think that's pretty like positive in a sense. If I plan to hire sales talent, I'm anyways going to invest 5 to 10K a month. So if I can achieve the same results, right? There's still some people that will probably object with like, oh, Jake, I think that hourly rate is higher than what I used to. Like, do you even work still with hourly rates, or just daily or monthly, or like, do you say like,
we do like a monthly hours?
Because
yeah, we do monthly hours just because like, the day rate thing is interesting. I don't know. It's like it's more about, for us, it's like, some days, you're going to need a little bit more some days, and maybe you need a little bit more some week versus the next. And so we usually do it based on like monthly hours is what we
so
do.
You just say like, hey, look, you get your VP part-time sales. That person will be there like about 2 days a week, will cost you about 15K a month, 10K maybe. And then like, hey, like if you're on the offsite for 2 weeks, that's fine. But then if you want to run an in-depth workshop, that's also fine. And how do you do it with your own talent? Because I mean, there's so many also
Yeah.
sales coaches out there that are roughly called JakeDunlap.com or ManuelHartman.com or whatever,
Yeah, right.
and they're typically like one person that's like attracting all the inbound leads and
Yeah.
stuff and the network, and they manage to grow to like 2-3 people for ops, junior sales trainers, or so you managed to scale consulting to about 40 people, from I understand from LinkedIn, over the
Mhm.
last 9 years. Can you share a bit more about your journey of like also do's and don'ts when hiring and training
So
and
many.
developing talent for your own
So
company?
many do's and don'ts. More don'ts than more don'ts than do's.
Hit me up.
It's interesting. Starting a people business, I think, or starting any business, I think that just making sure you know your vision. What do I want this thing to become, and then how do I work it backward? I think is so critical. The other thing I would say is, I think for so many people, just document everything. Document everything that you do, and iterate and look for similarities, because scaling a people business is much different than scaling a tech company.
Yep.
We have, I don't get the same leverage of like, I add a new client, my fixed costs stay the same or relative. Instead, I add a new client, my fixed costs go up, as a stair step. It's why venture capital and others hate businesses like ours until we get to a certain level of revenue, which we're getting there.
I
And so
think
I think,
so.
for me, it's, I never wanted to start a one man, one woman consulting business. I was, 32 or 3 at the time. I was like, I'm too young for this to be like lifestyle business. Not there's anything wrong with it. No, trust me. There's definitely days where I look at payroll and I'm like, man, if I was just a single shop, but that's just not fulfilling. I'm not going to be able to impact as many people that way. And so I
Right.
think for me, I really wanted to make sure that, and I think it's still continuing to evolve and iterate. And as I start to see more trends, it's like, okay, how do I pivot us toward, where this is a focus? And, like I said, I've mentioned sales tech a few times, is certainly a trend like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like a key point you mentioned. Like, first of all, like, yes, like a people business doesn't have 90% gross margin, but you also don't need as much engineering, product operations, whatever it comes with it. There's very few like scale profitable SaaS companies out there, right? Like, it's like this dirty little secret, which is not so secret if you look at the balance sheet. And the other thing which you mentioned I find interesting is you need to be really clear about your vision, right? How how do you take decisions around, are we an enablement company? Are we a coaching company? Are we a do it for you like interim company? Are we a tech sales RevOps company? Are
Yeah.
we actually a tech company at one point? Are we a talent headhunting company?
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting, and if you figure it out, you can let me know. But what we have done a good job of saying is who we're not, right? So we actually don't do sales trainings necessarily. Like, there's a lot of really great people, John Barros, Matt Cameron, Richard Harris. I mean, there's a lot of really good sales trainers out there. We don't typically do those kind of like, 1 day, 2 day workshops. So we don't do, we only do kind of focus on leadership positions and, kind of tactical ops or enablement roles. So, we've got kind of a focus there. I think what we're trying to do is to say, look, if you're trying to create a modern sales organization, you need people, you need process, and you need technology. And
Yeah.
those things, it starts with the process and the customer journey. Who are the types of individuals that we need to execute that process? And how do we use technology to make both the process and the individuals more effective? And so that's kind of our, I don't know. Plus, we've got a LinkedIn strategy group too that's going to hopefully be on $1 million run rate by the end of this year. And it's like how that
Oh,
fits in. Because again, we think in B2B, if you're doing lead gen or outbound or any of these things, LinkedIn's a critical component of that. So, we're always trying to test new things to stay at the forefront of like what's happening,
yeah, no, which I think is great. So also congrats on building that over the last 9 years, and congrats on hitting, I guess, like 85K monthly revenue with the LinkedIn group, then like as a million run rate. Could you tell us a bit like just how you feel comfortable sharing these numbers, like roughly overall scale consulting revenue? Like, I guess you're at 8 digit, not yet 9 digit, at like 30 people or 40 people,
Yeah.
and how the revenue is composed of the interim part, like the enablement and the talent headhunting, which is also quite
Yeah, the
profitable.
headhunting, we have partners for that. So
Okay.
that's been something that we've got really good partners that we kind of refer
Right.
people to, but we weave it in as a part of the business. For us, it's, the project work is probably half of our revenue. And then the interim and sales operations work is probably the other half. And, we'll do hopefully close to 6-7 million this year. And then hopefully the run rate closer to like 11-12 next year.
Cool.
So,
congrats.
It takes, thank you. I'll just tell you, when you're scaling a business, it takes time. And sometimes the pace that you want to grow isn't the pace that you're ready to grow. And I think, for me, I think about that a lot. It's like, if you're in a SaaS company, right, you've taken venture capital, it's grow. You don't have a choice. You don't have a choice.
No,
and that's why so many companies run into the ground.
Because you basically, like, if you sales up and you raise 100 million, or if you're gone and you get a 7 billion valuation, you essentially force yourself to hire 100 people within like a quarter or 6 months, even if you don't find great people, right? Even the people that ask you like, how many seats you want to book, like, what's your title? Nothing
Exactly.
against the SDRs out there in general, right? But I mean, against like generalizing sales. Really cool. So just before I forget, I'd love to ask you some rapid fire question, and then we're very happy to talk a bit more about the future of sales. So we ask these every podcast guest since like 30 episodes, I think, and it's always interesting why as well. So also in your business, do you prefer $1 of revenue from a new or from an existing customer, and why?
Oh, that's such a good question. I'm going to go existing, because if you can do that, it multiplies and compounds over time. And, obviously then the counterpoint is, well, you need the net new of 1 to then turn in. But I feel like, man, if you get a really great, and again, this is specific to my business, right? We're a people business and a project-based business. So for my business, the longer we retain people, the easier it makes, not having to find net new customers. So
that makes a lot of sense. And if you get a 100K bonus, you want it in cash or stock options or equity from your current company?
Oh, stock for sure.
That's always with people. We have sales leaders here on this podcast, and we have like entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs is always pretty clear. And if you can, I think you'll find this one interesting. If you can hire a junior sales rep for 50K and train that person up, or a senior sales rep for 150K that's already trained and in the game for a long time, which one do you take and why?
Ooh, that's a good question. Depends on what phase of growth you're at. There comes a time where you should hire for people that have been there and done it, and that are, it doesn't mean, because here's the thing, just because someone's been there and done it doesn't mean they're not coachable. So if I'm at the stage where I'm growing faster, I need people who are a little bit more experienced. If instead we've got a good foundation of people and we're trying to scale to like the next level, then maybe I take the more junior person. So I think it depends on where you're at.
Right. And what's your own number one source of improving your own sales skills, like people, podcasts, and books you can recommend to listeners?
Oh man, what do I do? Yeah, I mean, I do read a lot of books. I read a lot of really interesting, like marketing books, and a lot of other books that are not as sales related. So I'm trying to think if there's like a great book I've read recently, because I feel like you can just learn from all of this stuff. You know what I'll do? I'll recommend some like wild card books that I've read, not recently, but like over the years. If there's a guy named Seth Godin, if you guys haven't heard of him, Seth Godin, he writes about marketing a lot. He wrote some books early in his career called Purple Cow, and another one called All Marketers Are Liars. And I really feel like sales, there's a creativity component to sales that sometimes people are missing because they're so focused on their box. So check those books out. Check out anything by Seth Godin to kind of get not a sales book, but maybe something that you could, those are my recommendations.
Yeah, no, I think it's an excellent point. And often like the great best sales books are non-sales books. Like I love Speed of Trust. I think for me, like that's the best book on like integrity, credibility, like intent. It's like, so what's another thing? I guess you didn't read all these books at 20 years old. What do you wish you would have known when you were 20, and how old are you now?
I'm 41 now. What do I wish I knew when I was 20? I think back, I was going to school at Springfield, Missouri. What do I wish I would have known then? That the world is a very big place, meaning I grew up in the Midwest and I didn't get a lot of exposure outside of that until I left after college. And so I think I would have maybe, thinking about that as opposed to like what's comfortable. I
Yeah.
had to work almost full time in college as well too. So I was working 30 plus hours a week to put myself through college. So I think, maybe doing some study abroad, getting a more diverse, I guess, view on the world maybe could have helped me to be more strategic in those years of what I should do next.
Yeah, I love that one, especially that also like you finance your own college pretty much, and you work your ass off. I guess you've been at like 60, 70 hours, like with college plus 30 hours of financing work. So that shapes your attitude, right? Your grit and your persistence in sales. I mean,
Oh,
in anything in
absolutely.
life, but and
Absolutely.
maybe then I just alterate like the last question, like when you hire a salesperson, when you look at, I mean, I guess you got a VP sales coming up to you, like what do you think of Rep X regarding potential? What's the number one trait you're looking for?
Is there one trait I don't know if there's
Like
one
John
trait that I could say.
John McMahon has this Italian guy about like urgent curiosity, right? Like other people say hunger and drive, other people say like persistence, other people say like the inability to hear no, which I think is a bad one. But
Well, the key is to understand that usually on that one, people aren't actually saying no. That's just you internalizing it. They're just asking questions, and you're choosing to hear like negativity. I would guess I like the curiosity one. I think if someone is naturally curious, I don't think it makes them successful though, because there's those other types of people that are curious and they're just not very good at being curious, meaning they're like curious, they're like curious with an obvious agenda, right? And so how about that? It's like true curiosity, like a genuine, I just want to learn more about what's up. And then offer up some ways that I can help. And if it's a fit, it's a fit. If it's not, it's not. So I would say there's like a genuine curiosity that if someone has that and a ability to not take things personally, because that usually will lead to someone also being coachable. So if you're curious and you have the ability to reflect without judgment, I think those are the things that I would take probably 80% of the people that fit that profile.
nice. I find that a really interesting one regarding like the intersection of coachability and not taking things personally. Could you share one story anonymously, obviously, where you've seen that positively and negatively happening?
Well, yeah, the not taking things personally. I mean, on the negative side, I think it's why people don't listen to their calls or they don't want to hear it. It's like then they have to admit like I'm not perfect. So I would say the behavior that I see specifically on that one is that people, they don't want to go and see what actually happened to know how good or how bad it was. So, that's one. And then there's the flip side, the people, like I mentioned before, that actually are comfortable. Like, yeah, that's cool. Like, yeah, I can take feedback. Cool. All right. Yep. And they don't need to feel the need to justify why they did what they did. Right. Like there's nothing worse than those things. Yeah. But if you find yourself in a conversation, saying, yeah, but shut up. Like, just shut up. Nobody's trying to hear it. Like, if someone, you're not like, why? You're just saying it to make yourself feel better. And so that's probably it, like, yeah, but I did it because of this, this, and this. Like, great. Who cares? Nobody cares, man. And so, those are just some things to catch yourself on more than anything.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I think that's one of the, especially if it comes with an apology, like sales rep X, like, hey, why did you not follow up on the same day with video sales letters? I wanted to, but like, okay, I apologize, but it's like, are you apologizing or are you just justifying? There's a difference, right? So what do you do also if you see people and they have the potential, but they are coachable in general, but they don't have the hunger and drive to really succeed? They're comfortable of where they are. Some moms,
cool,
they're close.
Great.
10K.
I isolate them, and they can't talk to anybody else. Great, awesome. Hey, look, you want to be a lone wolf and do it your own way, and you're successful. One, those people will kill growth early at a company. So what I'll tell you from my own experience too. There's many times you might hire your top 1 or 2 performers and they are fantastic, but then you try to hire, 5 people, 10 people, and you're like, wow, why are none of them working out? Well, it's because the first people kept all the good accounts. They are fighting process and change because they had their own little way of doing it. And all of a sudden, growth isn't where you want it to be. And sometimes you got to fire those people, or you got to say, look, this is the direction we're moving. You're amazing. Here's going to be your book. Go sit over there, crush it, get paid. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you to do it, but you can't talk to anybody else.
Yeah.
You can't infect the other team.
You give them a very close territory in a sense, like very close book of business. So my question was also like,
run rampant. Go ahead, have a day. I'm not going to tell you.
But there's the other type, right? They're very social, they're very nice. Like everybody on the team loves them, but they do not perform, even after ramping for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years. What do you do with those that are very good for culture? That they're really eager to learn, but they know that not that everybody needs to be at 6 times on target earnings. Not everybody needs to close 1.5 million and earn 250,000.
Yep.
But what do you do if they want to earn 120K to finance living, but they only close 240K and it doesn't improve and you don't see a clear path?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So step one is like, is there another? Do I have the person in the wrong role? That's usually it. Is this person just in the wrong role, but they're at the right company? Right. I'll give you an example. Internally, we hired a more senior level individual who is, on the new business side that we thought was going to be able to, be a VP level individual on new biz. And, from the interview process, it's so tough, we thought we did it, we did our diligence and everything, and he was struggling. And, we were at that point where it's like, and then it's like, well, why did we? What was his skill? Like what? And then we converted him over to the account management side, crushing it. Yeah. So, by the way, just so you know that story also ends poorly, 6 out of 10 times, maybe 7 out of 10 times. So that's the first piece. Is this person in the wrong role? So that's what I first look at. And then if the answer is like, look, we just don't have a place, then you've got to let him go. Like, it just kind of is what it is. Like, now if you're telling me that they're hitting quota every other month, then that's fine. Like, I don't know how many of your listeners are baseball fans, but soccer
mainly
plays
European
too.
B2B startups on our side. So
yeah, well then let's go with football. Let's go with football. Then your football.
Basketball works.
Your football, not our football. Meaning like, look, your middle defender, or like let's say like your right wing defender may not be as good as the striker, and that's okay. Like a football team is made up of people that are of all different skill levels and have different skills. And so, it's the same way that they each might not get to quota the exact same way. So just be okay with that. Like you're going to have people on your team that are B players sometimes. I know everyone wants to sit there and say, we only have A players. Bullshit. It's really tough to build an army of A players.
Yeah. This is where process and technology are important at one point, because it's just impossible to only hire A+ players that harmonize, right?
Yeah. So that's what I think is like, to just say like, is now there's another thing that I will say though, but if that person's an anchor, anchors are the ones that keep teams down. Whether you realize that your team sees bottom performers and they say, well, look, I'm better than John. I'm doing better than him. Maybe I won't do that extra amount. I'm better than Susie over here. Yeah. And so you got to also make that choice as a leader. Sometimes you got to cut the anchor. Yeah. Like John's a great guy, but this is the type of culture we're creating.
Yeah. Meritocracy in a sense. Like
that's it.
Like on the sports team, like you're a great guy, but you're not gonna be on the 11 guys on the field because there's someone else better. You're not gonna play with 9 players in soccer. It's a tricky analogy, I guess. No, but I mean,
exactly.
Really, really, really cool. Like before we wrap it up, any last thought you would like to pass on to our listeners as well, and like how to build a sales company actually?
How to build a sales org. Again, start documenting everything earlier than you think you should, and start, because once you document, you can improve and you can test. It's not just your gut. So that's my advice, is instead of winging it, just start. Okay, so this time I use this discovery. For these 10 calls, I use this discovery. Okay, how did that work? For these 10 calls, I tried this positioning statement. How did that work? If you want to get better faster, you want to scale your revenue engine faster, document really early. When I scaled, one of my first like scaling roles is at Glassdoor as a first VP of sales. We scaled from 1 to 40 people in about a little over a year. we went from 0 to 1 million in MRR in about a year.
That's intense.
And
That's
and
crazy.
when you're scaling, well, it's just like what you said. It's like, I'm like, all right. They're like, Jake, hire more. I'm like, let's go. But how I could get people to be successful is like, we documented and we built process very, very early. So yeah, that's my best advice is like document early, document everything. Oh, how did I say it that time? Write it down, right? And then try it again, improve it, prep, So treat sales like a process. It's like a assembly line, right? And that there's new bottlenecks that you create when you try new things. But if you're constantly just manufacturing everything by hand and you're not writing down the instructions, then it becomes really hard to grow and scale. So document.
Yeah. No, thanks so much for that input. So yeah, really true pleasure having you on the podcast. And I'm sure we're going to do that another time, I guess, like in a year when you're at like this 10+ billion. So thanks so much for joining us here to talk about how to scale sales organization at a growth company after having done it very successfully at Glassdoor, also building your own company with scaled over the last 9 years from 0 to 5 million plus annual revenue, soon to be Tres Commas Club, right? 10 million plus, helping with interim VP sales position, sales operations, sales technology setup, but also sales enablement. No 1 or 2 days sales training typically, but sustainable work. It's really helping people to perform better. Thanks so much for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.